startup that is making next generation AI chips. Cerebras, as we know, is building the world's largest computer chip optimized for AI workloads. And we have joining us virtually all the way from Sunnyvale, California, Andrew Feldman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you at the Global AI Conclave. I request Chandra to please join me on stage and take this conversation forward. Over to you, Chandra.
Thank you, Ritika. We promise you this is the final virtual guest for the day. All the others are attending in person, including Chris Miller, so don't be disappointed. Andrew, but next time you're in India, please come for our event in person. Thank you for joining us at the Global AI Conclave.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so sorry I couldn't join you in person.
Right. Andrew, you are building, your claim to fame rather, is that you're building the biggest chips for AI. Normally, an AI chip would be the size of a fingernail or a postal stamp, but you've decided to make one the size of a dinner plate. And this is, at a time when people are talking about Moore's law and so on. So tell us about, what drove that thinking and how you're standing out in a world dominated by NVIDIA.
Well, thank you. We saw in late 2015 the rise of AI. And we asked ourselves a very simple question, and that was, why would a machine, a processor that was built and optimized over 20 years for graphics work, why would it be good at AI? And from there, we asked the simple question, what's hard about AI? And what turns out to be really hard about AI is the movement of information, of data. The actual mathematics done in a processor for AI is not very hard, but you need a huge amount of it. And so the hard part, the challenge for any processor maker is how are you going to move the data to memory and from memory, and how are you going to move it across hundreds and now thousands or 10,000s of little processors. And we saw an opportunity to, instead of moving it off a processor across the motherboard to another processor, or off a processor through the motherboard to a NIC, through a switch to another processor, we saw an opportunity to use more silicon to build a wafer scale processor. That means we use the entire wafer. We don't cut the wafer up. Now, our observation that the movement of data was fundamental, wasn't unique to us. NVIDIA saw that problem too, and they bought Mellanox. They bought a switch company and go about tying together thousands of little chips. But if you want to do AI quickly, and you want to do it for less power, you want a bigger chip. And that's what we saw in 2015. And by the early 2016, we'd raised a large Series A, and we were off to the races. And in August of 19, we announced that we had solved the problem, how to build a big chip, that had never been solved in the industry before. And we began shipping this part in 2020. In 2021, we announced we'd shrunk the geometry. We'd gone from 400,000 cores to 850,000 cores, and gone from 17 nanometers to 16 nanometers to 7. And we're now building the fastest processors for AI on Earth. Late last year, we began building these computers that we make. We began tying them together into supercomputers and running the largest AI models on them. And then later in July of this year, we announced that we would build around the world with our strategic partner G42. We will build a collection of the largest AI supercomputers on Earth. and we would build 9 of them, each with 4 exaflops of compute. We've completed the first one here in California. The second one is underway. The third and fourth ones are in planning. And over the next year, we intend to build more than 36 exaflops of AI compute.
Great.
So that's the journey. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share a little bit about it.
Right. Andrew, you know, something that I've noticed very interesting about your cap table, it has Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, Ilya, and I think D'Angelo of Quora as investors. So what was your vantage when the whole OpenAI crisis was unfolding? 2 of your investors on this side and 2 of your investors on that side.
So Adam D'Angelo was the first CTO of Facebook. He is among the most brilliant technologists in the Valley. We presented early in 2016 to Adam. He understood exactly the problem, that training takes too long, it's too power hungry, and that GPUs are not the right tool, or not the tool that you would have designed from a clean sheet of paper. So he invested. A little later on, Sam and Ilya and Greg and one of their extraordinary engineers named Scott Gregg also invested. But we have a who's who in Silicon Valley. Andy Bechtolsheim, probably the greatest angel investor, his first money in at Google. In fact, there's a rumor that Google got a bank account to cash his check. Founder of 5 or 6 companies and currently founder and CTO at Arista. He was an investor. Pradeep Sindhu, founder of Juniper, is an investor. We have an extraordinary collection of wise people who have been available to me to guide me a little bit, to keep me from making simple mistakes.
Right. There's another, bigger versus smaller debate in AI with respect to the size of LLMs. Now, Sam Altman, for example, has said that going forward, the incremental success of LLMs might not come from raising the number of parameters. So while the biggest models today are in the range of 500 billion to 1 trillion, you plan to build a chip that can train 100 trillion parameters.
Correct. I think the question here isn't do we need less compute? Sam is in OpenAI, and I think Mr. Brockman was quoted as saying, "He who has the biggest computer will win in AI." The question is, what you point this infinite demand of compute? What do you point it at? Do you point it at a collection of smaller models in a mixture of experts? Do you point it at one giant model with 1 trillion or 5 trillion or 50 trillion parameters? Do you work on models that are 100 billion parameters but use huge amounts of data? So not a trillion tokens, not 5 trillion, but maybe 20 trillion tokens. I think what everybody's clear on is the approximately infinite demand for compute. What's unclear is which flavor of model is going to be used to consume that compute. And there are a lot of really interesting results, right? Recently, Minstrel put out a model that was a mixture of experts. Microsoft has been doing pioneering research in mixture of expert models for a long time. While Sam has said that the models aren't getting bigger, he has the biggest model. And so I think it's very difficult to tell, and there are lots of different ways to skin this cat. And I think we will see together a tremendous collection of different approaches. What will be the same is the underlying need for unbelievable amounts of compute, vast amounts of compute. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity for those who build compute.
Right. As they say, during a gold rush, the guys who sell the shovels make the most amount of money.
Well, I'm a professional seller of picks and shovels. I think this is our 5th company. Many of the team have been with me along the journey. We very much love the infrastructure industry. We love building things that other people put their ideas on top of. We love it when other people's ideas take flight on our technology. And to build infrastructure, whether you're building switches, whether you're defending people's data, like your previous guest at Palo Alto, whether you're building compute for AI or compute for anything else, you have to have a passion for enabling other people's ideas. And at Cerebras Systems, this is our undying passion, is to make other people's ideas, to make their models fly.
Right. You have an office in Bengaluru. Can you tell us about the kind of work that happens here? How many employees do you have? Do you have plans on expanding the center?
We do. There's an extraordinary collection of AI talent in India, and that's, of course, not a surprise. They're a collection of the greatest universities in the world. There are exceptional engineers. We have, 37, 38 people, and it will be growing, perhaps doubling next year and doubling the year after. We do AI work. We train models. We do work in frameworks, which is in the compiler tool chain, making it easier for your models to run PyTorch. We do a whole collection of primary work. We also have offices in Toronto. We don't divide up work by region. We find people who have exceptional talents, and they run projects. And those projects are sometimes led out of Bangalore, sometimes led out of Toronto, and sometimes led out of Sunnyvale, California.
Right. So, Andrew, if I look at, the chip industry today, on the one hand, you have NVIDIA, Intel, AMD, Google, Amazon, and so on. And then you have startups such as yours, Cerebras, Graph4, Grok, Samba Nova, and so on. How do you, is there going to be consolidation? Is there space for multiple players? At least the internet world is winner takes all. How is it going to work out in the chip industry?
I think there are not so many industries where winner has taken all. I think in the hyperscale world, there are several in the U.S. and several in Europe, and a handful in the Middle East, including our partner, G42. There's some in Japan, an entirely different ecosystem in China. So I'm expecting there to be many winners. I think we have differentiated ourselves by building a faster part, by doing more business than all the other startups combined, by making customers extraordinarily successful. And if you look at the work that's been done on our models, we've published the top performing medical assistant called MedLLM. We've published the leading non-English LLM, a model called JACE, which is a native Arabic LLM. We have the leading and published the most downloaded 3 billion parameter network. That one's in English. It's called BTLM, downloaded more than 1 million times. We've put GPT models into the open source community, and we have customers around the world. I think we generally spend our time thinking about how to be better than NVIDIA. They are obviously the market share leader, and that's what we're focused on all day, every day, is how to build the best AI computer for our customers and partners.
Right. I'm going to take one more question, and then if people in the audience have a few questions, please let me know and we'll get a mic. You signed a deal with UAE to supply, 3 supercomputers. Have you also had discussions with the government of India? Because they're also talking about increasing compute, increasing access to GPU, and they've also said that, they will engage with multiple players. I want to understand if you've had any discussions with them.
I have. I was actually in New Delhi 10 days ago, meeting with government officials. We have had discussions. I think India represents a tremendous opportunity for the AI community. I think there are not enough data centers. I think there's not enough supercomputers. There's very few supercomputers for AI, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity. So of course we're engaged at all levels, and I hope that we can build extraordinary solutions for the Indian market. I look forward to doing work in Indic languages. I think there aren't good LLMs right now in a collection of the languages that are native in India, and I think we can do better as a community.
Right. Can we get a mic? Andrew, just 10 more minutes. We'll take a few audience questions.
Of course, happy to chat.
We have about 300, 400 people here in Bangalore, so a lot of questions. Yeah.
We're looking for great engineers.
Hello, Andrew.
You should give them an ID they can write to apply for a job at Cerebras.
You can write to me directly. You can write to jobs@cerebras.net. You can write to me. I'm Andrew at cerebras.net. You can also write to our exceptional country manager, Lakshmi, and I think she's Lakshmi at cerebras.net.
Right.
So, lots of choices. You'll get to us. Jobs@cerebras.net.
Yeah. Hello, Andrew. I'm Haris Agrawal. I look at engineering functions for a young AI startup in Roost. And we primarily look at testing as a specialized function, software testing. So my question is, we see a trend where we want business domain-specific or specialized LLMs. And does that still mean that, what you're trying to aim here is larger models on a wafer-sized chip? So does that still impact the demand for compute, right? Specialized LLMs versus generic LLMs is my question.
That's a really good question. I mean, we train supersized models for some customers, but we also train domain-specific models in the 3 billion to 7 billion parameter category. That's a model that is extremely inexpensive to do inference on. I think the questions around domain-specific models are entirely around data. Do you have exceptional data? Do you have data that separates you from your competition? And if you do, we can undoubtedly collaborate to build a model, to run a model, to train it, to outperform a general model. And so I think your intuition is spot on. I think many of our customers, one, for example, a large pharmaceutical company based in the UK, GlaxoSmithKline, they have an ensemble of models. And they are smaller. And each one is trained uniquely with special data that is gathered and curated and owned by GSK. And they get extraordinary results. And so I think you're thinking right along the right axis, that if you have really interesting data, a domain-specific model doesn't have to be giant, has to have exceptional data. And if you keep it small, your inference costs are low. And if you're trying to build a production solution, that's really important.
Yeah. Hi. So given that models are now open source, so how do we also...
Sorry,
Hi,
can you stand up, please?
Yeah, sure. Given that we are seeing models is also getting open source, but how do we democratize compute for, let's say, a country like India, where every small startup can access it easily and also contribute back to the compute, right? What are your views on that?
Unfortunately, I didn't hear. Could somebody repeat the question?
So he wants to know how one can democratize compute. Was that the question?
Yeah.
Especially for India. Because you guys charge too much.
I think he has got an audio problem.
Andrew, can you hear us? Yeah.
Now I can, yeah.
Did you? Yeah. So he wanted to know.
I didn't hear the question, so if somebody could repeat it.
Yeah. So he asked how one can democratize compute for a country like India. Unless
very
you're
hard
willing to
problem.
lower your prices.
Sure, to this audience, everybody can have one. No, I think it's a thoughtful question and a hard question. I think there are lots of vectors to democratize AI. I think we have to find ways to put large amounts of compute in more people's hands, number one. I think we have to write models that aren't just in English or dominated by English. It's number two. We have to enable more than one hardware platform. I think history teaches that if you want a healthy ecosystem, it's never based on a single hardware platform. All three of those have to take place. At Cerebras, we try and do our part. We have programs with universities, with researchers, with startups. We've partnered with startups to do interesting work together at a fraction of the cost that we charge large companies. We've worked with graduate students. We've worked with the open source community, all to do our part in being good members of the community. It's not easy. You are correct that this problem, this AI challenge, is hugely compute intensive, hugely power intensive. So, it's not just the hardware cost, but it's the operating cost of these clusters. Some of these clusters that we build, these supercomputers, they take megawatts of compute, megawatts of power. They deliver exaflops of compute. These are sort of previously unimaginable amounts of compute and consume huge amounts of power. Still less than if you'd have done the same amount of work on a GPU, but it's still a lot of power. And that converts into real cost. And I think has to be a collaboration between government, academic institutions, startups, and the private sector, companies like us, companies like NVIDIA and AMD and others, to find ways to try and make available compute to especially startups that are doing innovative work, graduate students, young faculty at research institutions.
Right. I think we have time for 2-3 more questions, guys. Yes.
Hi, Andrew. My name is Ganapati, a startup co-founder in Generative AI space. My question to you is, you have been in the chip industry for 2-3 decades. How is it shaping up for being ready for quantum computing and very specifically quantum machine learning? Are we there yet, or we are still far away with respect to hardware being ready for quantum computing and quantum machine learning?
First, thank you for noticing I'm a grandfather. I appreciate that, and I am a proud grandfather of a 9-year-old granddaughter. I have been in the industry for 30-odd years, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege. I think for production work that you and I want to do every day, we're not close with quantum. And I don't think we're 5 years out. I don't think we're 10 years out of delivering quantum to solve problems that you and I care about today. We are a long way away. And I think there's been a huge amount of hubris in the quantum community. There are a very small number of players who have told their investors and have told the market the dead truth, that this is hard, they're a long way away. It's a journey that absolutely should be taken, but it takes a huge amount of time and money. And the problems they're well suited to solve aren't the problems that we're working on today. The quantum won't help AI. Quantum won't help databases. Quantum won't help the vast majority of problems that we face today, because it's a machine that's good at something different. And I think, if you want the straight truth, one of the founders of a company, a quantum company, perhaps the leading quantum company is PsiQuantum, and I think that's PSI Quantum, and they've been dead honest with the world. They're doing extraordinary things, and they're many, many years away. And I think you don't have to worry about it eating into your market. We don't ever worry about quantum in AI. It's
Right.
in AI, it's 3 decades away.
Right. One last question, please. Yes, please.
Hi, Andrew. Pleasure meeting you actually. So I'm Ganesh from Digital Track. So I closely work with NVIDIA to set up a platform from the R&D divisions actually. So my question is actually entire ecosystem is trying to help the like country to access the AI. So what is your roadmap for the India because of like amid of NVIDIA domination across the globe? I can say you must be knowing very well than anyone.
Oh, he
So
likes,
what is your
yeah.
road
Yeah.
plan for India to, whereas the VAP series, like chips, priced at very high, close to 1 million initially itself, like, so to enter into the country like India, what is your roadmap and when do you plan to debut probably with your VAP series in India? I want to know.
Sure. I think the problem of the cost of NVIDIA, the long lead times, the monopolistic behavior is something that many people have commented on. We are today a mid-sized company. We're growing very quickly. We recognize the vast opportunity in India. We've put a team there. I've begun to visit, talk to government officials, to learn. We've met many of India's leading AI thinkers and entrepreneurs. But I think there's a huge amount of work to be done. And I think, getting government pronouncements, getting commitments, signing pieces of paper is the start. The hard work is after that when you build data centers, when you build modern data centers where you ship gear, where you stand up gear, where you offer it to people like you in a cloud offering so the cost can be driven down as low as possible. That's the hard work.
Right.
And we have the hard work ahead of us. And so I think the way you drive down the cost is to share the compute resource, right? The compute costs what it costs. There's a huge amount of technology there. There's hundreds of millions of dollars of invested capital. Each generation of chip costs perhaps for a startup $150 to $200 million to develop. There have to be returns on that money. But the way to do that is to be sure that it's always being used, to be sure that it's amortized over many customers and over a long period of time. And those are our plans. And I think you'll be hearing a lot from us in the months and years to come.
On that note, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us at the AI Conclave. A huge round of applause. Thank you, Andrew.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and we very much look forward to being in person next time.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'll hold you to that. On that note,
Please do.
on that note, I have an announcement to make. We will be breaking at lunch now because the minister